Blockchain Show is a podcast that demystifies cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technology.
Hello, folks. Welcome back. You're listening to The Blockchain Show. I'm your host, Ethan Kinderconnect, and this is episode number 169. I'm here with the guys from IoTeX, Larry Pang and Raullen Chai. Guys, welcome to The Blockchain Show. Thank you for being with me today. How are you doing?
Doing great, Ethan. Glad to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. I suppose the best way to get started is have you guys maybe each take a few minutes, tell us about yourselves, and then how you got involved with the blockchain.
Perfect. Yeah, maybe I can jump in and then Raullen can go. So my name is Larry, born and raised in Los Angeles, educated at MIT, graduated in 2013, and spent 5 years in management consulting at Oliver Wyman after graduating. And at Oliver Wyman was working on a lot of digital transformation projects. And, was introduced to blockchain kind of through a project through the World Economic Forum, actually. We're talking about more like a global financially inclusive payments network. And Bitcoin popped up along with other, ways for people to pay each other like M-Pesa in Kenya and things like that. So it really sparked my imagination about how we can do things differently in the world. And then about 2 years ago, I was looking for my next gig and came across IoTeX. Now at IoTeX, 2 years later, I work on a lot of the things around marketing and business development for the company. But, I'll pass it over to Raullen to explain his baby as the co-founder of IoTeX.
Thanks, Larry. Hi, everyone. This is Raullen. I actually got my PhD in Canada, focused on cryptography back in 2008. So that's where, I got into the blockchain industry. I did a bunch of Bitcoin mining while I was doing my PhD, using like a free service the school has, which is pretty cool. And after graduation, I actually landed my first job at Google. So I stayed there more than 4 years, leading lots of very interesting projects. Probably some of you guys heard about HTTP2 protocol, Google's cloud load balancer, which still earns Google like 10 millions or 20 millions a year right now, and also lots of security initiatives at Google. And then after that, I jumped to Uber because Uber was expanding so aggressively and has lots of privacy and security concerns around their users' data. So that's why I led a team over there, to do lots of things around cryptography, especially privacy regulation and also security. Back in 2017, I have met my other two co-founders, and I think it's a good time for myself to try it out myself, right? So blockchain has been like a one industry which I'm always observing, watching, learn, and also doing some kind of random stuff. But I think the opportunity actually come for me to do something real. So that's why together with two other co-founders and a core team, 5-6 people, including Larry. So we started IoTeX to focus really on how to bring the internet, the trust of things to the people's life based on, blockchain technology, confidential computing, and also trusted hardware. So that's where I would check.
You guys have a really excellent background. Something that really stuck out to me when I was reading the email back in February. We've been talking a lot about protecting identities lately, security. Obviously, that's one of the attractive things about the blockchain. But I saw that you guys were using the blockchain in the right way. It was kind of what it seemed like to me, because, I don't know, maybe we're getting away from the original cypherpunk vision a little bit sometimes. Some of these companies that we talk to, it's just diverging quickly. So I really like the kind of the ethical, moral sense that you guys have of decoupling the identity of people's devices from users and issuing decentralized accounts, as this kind of an access control and login for IoT. Internet of Things is something that was pretty hot a couple years ago. Obviously, they're still getting developed. They're still being used rapidly, deployed, but I haven't really heard anything about privacy and security. So I'm really interested if you guys can talk a little bit about how you came to this vision and technologically how you are making that work.
Yeah, Ethan, let me maybe explain a little bit about, the current Internet of Things, and I'll pass it over to Raullen to explain more around, how we're trying to change the status quo, right? So, for those that are not too familiar with IoT today, the Internet of Things is basically the concept of anything that, has a Wi-Fi module or a connectivity, something that's connected to the internet, can pass data back and forth. that's called a connected device and part of the global Internet of Things, right? So today it consists of things like smart toilets, smart vehicles, smart buildings, all these different devices that are constantly connected and passing data back and forth to the internet. Today's IoT, unfortunately, is pretty siloed, right? It's very corporate dominated. So a lot of those identities and a lot of that data that you were talking about is actually owned by, if you have a Google Nest or an Amazon Ring camera, it's kind of dominated in these corporate silos. So, one thing that we see as a huge opportunity is not just to use blockchain to give trust into this ecosystem, trusted identities, trusted devices, and trusted data, but also to break down those giant kind of corporate silos, right? And that's kind of where this decentralized and horizontally scalable future really comes into play. But, today, we're starting to see more and more headlines around IoT devices, right? Ring had a really large run of, device hacks at the end of last year. We're starting to see, Zoom meetings getting Zoom bombed because of questionable security practices. And, even worse, Zoom, was found out to be lying about an important part of their encryption technology. They use something called client to server encryption, but they claim true end-to-end encryption. So we're starting to see a lot of these things start to surface, and a lot of consumers start to be educated about these issues. But we still need some new alternatives and new solutions, and that's what really IoTeX is trying to build. So then maybe Raullen can explain a little bit more of the vision for how we use those kind of three pillars of our project: blockchain, secure hardware, and decentralized identity, to create a more fair ecosystem, a more open ecosystem. So yeah, Raullen, maybe explain a little bit from that perspective.
Yeah, sure. So of course, we still have a very strong cyberpunk DNA within us. Like the vision for us is basically to build this open, transparent, and also scalable IoT infrastructure, which is distributed around the world. Can be used by anyone basically for free, right? Users use it for free, and hardware vendors use it for free, and also preserves users' privacy and data sovereignty type of thing. So we are still along this like initial vision of cyberpunk, in a way, just applied to the IoT world, right? So basically, we started with like three pillars of our technology. Of course, first one is blockchain, because blockchain is a root of trust for lots of things. So we have the team, all team get together. All our actual team members are actually from Google, Facebook, Uber, Intel, those big companies here, and also some overseas team. And we build this protocol, layer 1 protocol from scratch, using 1 year. Basically, we launched our mainnet actually last year around April 22, right? So it's just like 1 year. It's actually 1 year yesterday. And this blockchain has been running by delegates, more than 70 delegates around the world. And also processed more than 4 million transactions already. So it's pretty stable. And also this blockchain, most importantly, is more optimized for lots of IoT use cases. So that's one, right? So the second part, we basically what we do is trust the hardware, like Larry already touched base on, is we want to build in something, software or hardware, into the device itself to make it connectable to the blockchain and to finish lots of things we want the device to be done. For example, like how can they preserves users' data privacy, right? So in terms of like a home camera, which we do have, is a very, very specific use case we do have right now. Is so you will have some software plus a little bit of hardware into the camera itself, and all the data is actually encrypted by our key on the edge within the camera. The key is of course controlled by the user, can be rotated or somehow later. So user basically owns everything about this, every access about this encrypted data. So he can, access the data. He can grant access to his friends or maybe loved ones. So that's a very concrete example, right? Trusted hardware. And the third one, like we are putting like so much, energy into it, still like this confidential computing. So once we have onboarded lots of devices onto the IoTeX network, the next question is how can we, help the user to make use of their data, right? Because they are encrypted by the edge device, and they can only be accessed by the user. So how can we enable, some very interesting use cases like AI, like some other automation, for user, right? So here, like confidential computing actually kicks in. Basically, it means you can compute on top of encrypted data without compromise privacy. So this is like ideal technology. It's like holy grail, in the entire cryptography world, right? So how can you do this? I think we already have this technology. Yeah. So basically, putting these three pieces together, so we are achieving our goal of this Internet of Trust thing.
It's really excellent. And I know that you were just mentioning briefly the private security camera. How would you describe that to someone who's maybe a little bit naive and they're at the store and they're looking at all the different baby monitors and security cameras, and why should they go with something that is cryptographically secured?
Yeah, let me tackle this from an anecdotal perspective, right? So going back to November, December 2019, we're starting to see a lot of these Ring cameras get hacked, right? And right around Christmas time, you see headlines around people hacked into the camera and are playing with the two-way audio and talking to people's kids, pretending they're Santa Claus, right? So how does that actually happen, right? So in the Ring instance, right, that specifically happened because of faulty kind of username password architecture. These hacks weren't really sophisticated at all. The majority of them were just, hackers today can buy databases of breached passwords. You see data breaches all the time, right? So all those username and password combinations that you don't reset, maybe a hacker has it and they're using to access your accounts right now, which is why it's so important to always cycle through your passwords, right? But that's just a preventative measure. The real way to make sure this doesn't happen again is we've basically built this home security camera that's not only fully privacy preserving, but it also uses a different login mechanism, right? So by using a blockchain public private key and a decentralized identity as a login mechanism, it basically does two things, right? It makes sure that password is non-brute force hackable, which is also the source of a lot of password hacks today. A lot of people don't know an 8-digit alphanumeric password can be cracked in under 2 seconds these days, right? So again, username passwords are something that Silicon Valley has been wrestling a long time with trying to remove. But I think that decentralized identities is something that's is very important because it also grants people the ability to fully own their data, which is the other big part of this device, right? So not only does it prevent brute force password hacks, and not only is it kind of a separate smart home identity from your internet identity to reduce the risks of that cross-pollination of data breaches, but it also, and most importantly, gives full access of all the data from the camera to the user. So IoTeX, as the platform that powers this camera, doesn't have access to the data. Canvas, who's the large security camera manufacturer that we partner with to launch this, doesn't have the data. All the data is encrypted by the private key that only the user owns. And not to extend this into another example, but this concept of encryption is actually a very big discussion point in the industry right now, right? Zoom was actually very recently, amongst all of their kind of security incidents, they had one case where they were trying to say that they had true end-to-end encryption, but they actually were discovered to only have this what's called client-server encryption, right? So basically what that means is from your mobile device to Zoom's server in the cloud, that communication is encrypted. But once it hits their cloud, all of your data is decrypted, meaning their cloud admins can see it. They basically have access to that data, right? So if you claim something like that, end-to-end would mean your one laptop to another laptop. So kind of lying about the visibility into their users' data is something that we're starting to see with a lot of tech companies today, right? Like even the definition of privacy and definition of end-to-end encryption is at risk. So, IoTeX, we take a very purist perspective. We really try to, not just establish policies and establish, false marketing. We're really building to the real thing, the one that's fully user-centered, fully end-to-end encrypted, and fully private for users.
Yeah. Thank you, Larry. That's a really good point. I think even yesterday I was looking at a Zoom meeting, and they had up in the left corner a little lock that said your connection is securely encrypted. and it just kind of made me, giggle a little bit inside because we got bombed pretty good by a bunch of kids. But it brings up another point when you're talking about the cameras. I think Google has a patent for a microphone in one of their. I'm not sure which device it is, but it's like a like a speaker or smart thermostat or one of those devices, and it's it's a patent for some sort of software that can actively listen for I think different products that a person might be interested in, and it can tell if someone's arguing or if it's just insane the amount of data that these companies are getting away with. So really glad to see what you guys are working on. And my next question is for Raullen. You mentioned a little bit about the I think you did the Pebble tracker, another aspect of how you are keeping things secure. And I know that it's a trusted asset tracker. I'm just curious, is that only assets that are through IoTeX, or is it also other types of assets?
Yeah. So basically, Pebble Tracker demonstrates another layer of meaning of Internet to trust things, right? We talk about a camera, which is most like a privacy meaning to lots of people, normal users. But Pebble Tracker will be meaning something very different for lots of industrial use cases, enterprise users, right? So the idea behind the Pebble Tracker is, so you have some secure chip, some software on the edge, like whenever like a Pebble tracker generates like a data point, no matter its temperature, its velocity, its humidity or whatever sensor they have, right? When this data point is ever generated, it actually gets signed and also encrypted by this key, this secure chips on the edge. So all the data actually goes back to the blockchain, maybe to the cloud, right? So it's trustworthy. So based on this data, so you can do lots of interesting stuff, no matter it's DeFi or it's some supply chain management, some logistic application. So we want to create this really like an end-to-end pipeline for people to use, because when we interview with this supply chain companies, is business owners, right? So one of their big concern is, of course, we can use blockchain to automate lots of things happening for our supply chain, especially supply chain finance. When this arrive to pay this some type of thing, but one thing I'm not comfortable with right now is the data real, right? How about if someone tamper data on the edge and give me a fake data, so then I will have a pure loss financially, of course. So that's why we think combining this trusted data actually together with blockchain is really what is missing in the industry right now to make the full picture actually reviewed by people.
Yeah, just a little bit more on Pebble Tracker, right? Pebble Tracker is a really interesting type of combination of two tamper-proof technologies, right? One at the hardware level and one at the software level. So the concept of a tamper-proof hardware is something that already we all use in our daily lives, right? That chip on your credit card, that's a piece of secure hardware that protects your spending credentials. There's also a chip in your iPhone that protects your biometrics and your face IDs. And your fingerprints, right? So this kind of specialized hardware called trusted execution environments or secure enclaves or secure elements, there's a lot of different names, synonyms for them. But we're starting to see these being introduced more and more often. It's just the fact that they're closed and programmable. Think about like all these like iPhones in the past that used to have to be jailbroken, right? We're kind of seeing a similar thing where iPhones secure element can only be used for Apple processes. But what we're bringing to the industry, we've actually just announced a partnership with Nordic Semiconductor, which is a very large publicly traded hardware manufacturer specializing in radio chips and such. So we're working with them on Pebble Tracker. It basically applies this concept of tamper-proof hardware and writes that data simultaneously to the blockchain, which is a piece of tamper-proof software. And that combination presents a really pure source of data, a really pure form of data that doesn't have to be verified by an intermediary, right? Because that the data came from a verified and authentic device, and that it was written immediately as it was generated, meaning the data was written to the blockchain immediately, so that it hasn't been changed after the fact due to the immutability of blockchain. So that combination really provides, a trusted data pool, which I think we're just starting to understand the real financial and operational impacts of such a trusted data pool, right? You don't need to have, insurance companies dig through thousands of underwriting or insurance claims. You can have trusted data inform those decisions. You don't need to kind of, have costly resolution of, airbag recalls in a supply chain, because that data is there and it's written and it's trusted, right? So really, we're trying to extend this concept of blockchain trust into something more relevant for the IoT. And it's just the fact that IoT today generates the most data out there. So that's kind of what the combination of secure hardware and blockchain is really able to do.
Yeah, very well said. I see that you guys have some, you mentioned you had partnerships. I'm just curious if there's anyone else building on IoTeX, like manufacturers or enterprise or developers, anything like that you can speak on?
Yeah, so in addition to UCAM, right? UCAM is actually a partnership with Tenvis. Tenvis is a large security camera manufacturer, and we have relationships with them, and also a lot of Shenzhen manufacturers. So basically, they have, they've shipped a lot of different cameras to governments, to consumers, to enterprises, maybe over, a couple million over the past few years. But they came to us looking for the next big feature, and that's privacy. So we're looking forward to UCAM 1 and potentially additional UCAMs in the future with them. And then there's also Nordic Semiconductor, which we kind of work with on Pebble Tracker, as we explained. One big relationship we have with the enterprise space is right now IoTeX is the co-chair of the Industrial Internet Consortium's blockchain group. And the Industrial Internet Consortium was founded by GE, Dell, Huawei, Microsoft, and it is consisting of 300 of the world's largest tech and IoT organizations. So basically, it's not necessarily a standards development organization like you would see in like an IEEE or OMG. But this one is more specifically focused on end user testing. So, they run a lot of test beds, a lot of test drives, and we're just starting to see blockchain become a role in these different kind of consortium-based testing situations. So something that we're really interested in, along with IoTeX, you also have Amazon and Huawei as the other co-chairs of the blockchain working group. So we're in really good company there. But the nature of these test beds is not looking for, creating a simple D app. It's really how do you combine, assets in the field with this concept of a kind of a hybrid cloud and blockchain architecture, again, to really enable these trusted data and trusted devices. And, we see IoTex's role in the ecosystem as the provider of trusted data and trusted devices. What people choose to build on top of it using our tools and our platform is really up to them. So really excited to just dig much further into this type of journey.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, what would it look like for a, like a customer, somebody who's, say, just getting a security camera or another product powered by IoTeX? Are they directed, like when they buy it, to set up? Is there some sort of like, I guess just walk me through the setup process for someone who's new to IoTeX.
Yeah, Raullen actually just hand delivered the very first batch of UCAMs to folks in Silicon Valley here for beta testing and such. Maybe Raullen, you want to explain a little bit of the setup process and why it's needed?
Right. I think ultimately we want to have this to be like an open, transparent system. So, every user, every vendor, every manufacturer can hook up to our system, our entire infra, effortlessly, seamlessly, right? So of course that's our goal. Probably 1-2 years ago. For the UCAN right now, we work with like one manufacturer in Asia very closely, in terms of integrating with our technology, also our platform. So this part is being done very well. So they have implement our firmware or something inside of camera, and they manufacture the camera delivered to the US market. For now, we are helping them to do some beta testings around community, like a real physical kind of community. We actually deliver this UCAN to the hands of lots of people who are very interested in the privacy, right? Those people usually have a very decent income, very decent house, very decent family, so they have very strong interest in things like this. So the feedback we got so far is quite good. It's quite positive, right? Although there are some, here and there we need to fix and improve. But like I think the general concept and also the product is very, very well received by the physical community here. So once the first product I think this one will be launched very soon in a gigantic scale in the US market, probably in late May or even early June, right? Then after that, we will have the second product, which will have a very similar concept also on board onto the IoTeX network. But I think the second one will be much, much easier compared to the first one because everything is almost set up. They will just install our firmware, then everything is hooked up. Then we will have the third one, fourth one, and hopefully exercise this pipeline more and more. We can modularize lots of things to make this like a really effortless kind of onboarding process for everyone.
Yeah, just maybe provide a little more context on what crypto projects think about when onboarding users these days, right? So a lot of like layer ones, people that have built out their ecosystems from scratch, just like IoTeX, right? IoTeX built out the entire platform protocol, everything from scratch, starting mid 2017. But basically, these days, these types of networks are doing one of two things, right? They're either being their own VCs, kind of self-funding a lot of projects, different developer groups to build things on their networks, or they're kind of being their own best customers and building their own first set of marquee products to basically showcase, this is what we envision other people to want to build on our platform in the future, right? With the exception of maybe Ethereum and EOS, which has a lot of organic traffic, and I think Ethereum has around 1,500 dApps right now. Other networks are really trying to define what is their niche, right? What is their differentiating factor? What can people build on my platform that nobody can build on any other platform? And what's really exciting is I think IoTeX has really found that, right? It's all about trusted data and trusted devices for us as the foundation for what people can build using those tools, right? So UCAM is a great example of this. It's basically up to date. We've built a lot of things at the foundational protocol level. We've also built tons of middleware and tools that kind of reside and are available to IoTeX developers. It's just we operate at such a complex intersection of blockchain, IoT, and privacy that we felt the need to create and consolidate all of our technologies into one product, not as the end all be all, right? This is just a stepping stone and the first product, but it's really teaching people how to build revenue generating products, revenue generating businesses on top of IoTeX, which is really in the post ICO era. I think everyone's getting more serious about this. And I think IoTeX is really going to be one of the first ones to find a real product market fit, right? Like when you get this camera in your hands, this UCAM, you're not going to notice it's a blockchain product. The setup process, we try to one-click setup away, and everything else, you're getting the same user experience as you would a Ring or a Nest camera. It's just the fact that you have a real benefit, and that's full privacy. So I think once people start to realize that blockchain is really getting to that cusp of being usable and functional, it's really great for the entire ecosystem.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think once people realize the just how powerful that the privacy tools are, I think it'll really take off. Now, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I was just going to ask if you use any smart home devices at home, and maybe we like to ask this to a lot of people all the time, right? Like, I used to have an Amazon Echo device, and it had a little camera on top, and every time I put it on my desk, I couldn't stop wondering, like, is this thing on? Is this thing watching me? I had to unplug it, right? So, even when we start to look at all these speakers and cameras that are showing up not only in our neighborhoods but also our homes, I think we have to take a real look at ourselves and say, are these things working for me, or are they working for the powers that be in big tech? But from your perspective, Ethan, do you use any smart devices at home?
No, I actually don't. I'm kind of paranoid about that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
well, maybe with these privacy preserving ones, it might be a new wave that you can trust, right?
Yeah, I really want to. I mean, I love technology, and I think that I would love to have that sort of thing, but it just hasn't felt felt right yet. And that's why I was so excited to talk to you guys about what you're developing, because I think it's really a huge step in the right direction. And I'm really hopeful and enthusiastic for what you guys are doing. But I'm curious, kind of what's the time frame for deployment, and when can people start buying these devices and start participating in what you're working on?
Yeah, like I said, we are doing beta testing around the community here in California, which will hopefully be done by end of next week. Then we will ship out, I think, over hundreds UCANs to the people who pre-ordered probably back in April, right? So we will have them to try it out first. This will take another probably 2 to 3 weeks, and then by end of May or maybe early June, so we can launch this on Amazon or maybe and other e-commerce platforms here in the US. So lots of people, normal people, we will have the chance to buy.
Oh, that is excellent.
Right.
Yeah, so it's getting real right now, right? I think this has been a long time coming for us. I think this really started for us. Back in January, we received the CES Innovation Award for UCAM. So that's when we introduced it to the world. Been talking to crowdfunding platforms around the world. We're going to be launching one in Japan, for example. And, I think COVID definitely put a little bit of a damper on the aggressiveness we were trying to use to push out this camera. But unfortunately, the nature of physical products is also interesting, right? It's not just about shipping a piece of software from point A to point B with zero marginal cost. It's, we're in the hardware space and working with, putting devices in people's hands. So, it's been a long time coming for us, but we're just really excited to put this in the hands of the community. I think everyone's been itching to see it. So excited for that, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, congratulations so far on your success. I wish you guys all the best. I just wanted to give you a few minutes here to give us some closing thoughts and, where people can go to stay connected.
Yeah. So again, UCAN is just like a one use case. We get ourselves started on this road to the IoT world, Internet of Trust of Things, right? So after UCAN, we will have very interesting product actually also landing on the IoTeX network. Yeah, just stay tuned. And also IoTeX network will be we will grow more by, integrating with other very, you guys probably know, like decentralized storage systems, decentralized networking system, and also some decentralized computing systems. All those things will be part of the IoTeX network, right? So on one side, we land different devices onto IoTeX network, and behind IoTeX network, there will be different service providers, of course, decentralized. Have this cyberpunk spirit who's serving computing, storage, and networking for users and for manufacturers, right? So that's the ideal thing. We want to get it done in the next 3 to 5 years. So that's a very big goal, and we have a very solid state. I think everything is in very great shape. So just go there, try out. You can give us, as much as possible feedback to help us improve, give us new ideas, help us to build new stuff on top of IoTeX network. Yeah, so we are building this IoT world all together.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of ways to get involved in the IoTeX network, right? So I think whether you're a developer or just a enthusiast, or you want to be a delegate, there's a lot of things that IoTeX offers, right? For those that run node infrastructure, for example, we have more than 60 amazing delegates that help maintain the IoTeX network, including Blockfolio, CoinGecko, and a lot of other marquee names in the industry. And like Raullen said, this is just kind of where we're getting started, right? So, we have an active Telegram community. We post a lot of the discussion topics around blockchain and IoT on the forum. And we're just starting to launch our first set of, really original thought leadership. So, maybe I can pass along our latest report called When Privacy Hits Home to Ethan, and you could drop it in the show notes. But yeah, really looking forward to the future and want to thank Ethan for his time today. Definitely a fan of the podcast.
Well, thanks, guys. Larry and Raullen. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. I'll definitely include that in the show notes with links so that people can click through to stay involved and continue learning about what you guys are working on. So I just want to thank you both again for taking the time to come and educate us about this, Internet of Trusted Things. That's a new term on the podcast. I really like that. Yeah, guys, thank you. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
You too, Ethan. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us, Ethan.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right.